The Jacksonville Jaguars failed to protect their food. They didn't eat their breakfast. And Travis Etienne fumbled the game away. I'll talk about it here on the Postcast edition of Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It's a tale of two halves today for the Jacksonville Jaguars as they fall in the opener 20-17 to the Miami Dolphins in a game that they totally had in their hands. I'm Tony Wiggins with the Locked On Jaguars podcast, where it's your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen. This postcast is sponsored and brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code, all lowercases, LockedOnNFL, to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Tale of two halves, tale of two moods in my household. At halftime, I made a social media video that says, I think this is going to be a good day for y'all. The Jacksonville Jaguars came out, and every single thing that they deliberately attempted to accomplish in the offseason was evident on the football field. Defense was active. The scheme was working. They kept everything in front of them. They weren't giving up any big plays. They were moving the ball on offense, running the ball and throwing the ball. It was 17-7, and it just appeared that they had all the momentum in the world. Come out in the second half, they were a little bit lethargic on the first couple of drives, but then they picked it back up and had one of the best drives that I've seen. It looked like it was about to be their second 96-yard drive of the game. Gave the ball to Travis Etienne to go up the middle. He looks like he's running for a touchdown. Javon Holland hits the ball, comes out. Guess what? Not only did they not score, but Tyreek Hill caught an 80-yard touchdown. And then momentum kicked in, and the Jags couldn't get it back. They just couldn't get it back. Disheartening loss. There are no moral victories. There are no moral victories. You lost. And they lost this game. Now, I see a lot of people blaming this on Doug Peterson. I'm not going to blame this on Doug Peterson. I'm not going to blame it on play calling. The Jaguars had three things that went wrong in this game. I'm going to tell you what it is right now. One of their best players fumbled the ball and fumbled this game away. Period. End of discussion. And you saw him sitting on the bench with his head down in a flat-out disgust, and he should have been. We got to stop this. Well, somebody else made a great play, and you know one play doesn't cost. No, one play cost them this game. They were going to go up 24-7. Even if he doesn't score a touchdown, they go up 20-7. And once the momentum was gone, then all of the other things that you are afraid of about this football team reared its ugly head. The offensive line, once the momentum went to Miami and they started to pin their ears back, they all of a sudden couldn't block. Couldn't block. Doug Peterson trying to play call him out of it, going for it on third down. He's lucky they missed the field goal, because he would have been the GOAT. And I'm not talking about the greatest of all time. He would have been the one that everybody would have been picking at and talking about had Miami connected on that field goal. Why would you go for it at that point? I understood it. I did. I probably understood it too much. Sometimes when you understand something like that, it means you probably they shouldn't have done it, right? I'm sitting there thinking like I'm playing John Madden. I'm like, you're losing momentum. You might as well just go for it. I didn't necessarily like the play call, but it ended up not hurting him in the long run. But what it did do was it continued this thing where Miami just had the momentum. And momentum is a real thing. I want to get to some of your comments because there's a whole bunch of them coming in right now. But they looked like an improved football team physically in the first half. And then all of a sudden, it just fell apart. They didn't score any points in the second half. Couldn't get anything going. It felt like they left their mojo in the locker room. And maybe this is a lesson that they can learn. Like, you haven't arrived, right? I'll point out some good things later on in the show, but I'm also going to point out some negative things. I mentioned the fumble, and now I've mentioned the offensive line. The third thing is Antonio Johnson forgot how to tackle. Because had he made some tackles early in the game, I think the Jaguars probably could have been up bigger than 24-7. I mean, 17-7. They probably could have been up by way more points than that. They got to get some help. I told everybody, right before the season started, I said, look, if I had to look at their roster right now, the things, and there's an episode for it, all you got to do is go back and Locked On Jaguars and you'll see it. I said the things that it appears that this team right now is going to need to address. They're going to have to address offensive line, and they're going to have to address safety again, and put somebody back there that can play. I would have been in favor of them moving Darnell Savage back to safety and putting Monteric Brown in at the nickel, or Jarian Jones in at the nickel, and just going with it from there. He Antonio Johnson, number 26. One of his strengths coming out of college was tackling. The weakness was supposed to be his ability to cover in space. As it turns out, he didn't suck at covering in space, but he was awful today at tackling. And you just can't be bad at tackling. You got to clean that stuff up. This game, I feared it for this reason. And my boy Sam hit me up and said, I told you Jacksonville was going to beat Miami. Here's the fear that I had, man. The fear that I had was that Miami, you totally outplay them, and then they'd hit 3 or 4 big plays on you and they'd crush you. And Jalen Waddle went for 60. Tyreek Hill went for 80. Devin Achane got loose on some little quick out screen passes and got more first downs. Regardless of all that, this was a game that the Jacksonville Jaguars should have won, and they gave it away. And you have to find ways to win games. Yeah, it didn't necessarily come down to one play, but this is about as close to one play just ruining everything that these guys have worked for in the offseason in game one as I've ever seen. This is about as this is one play. Travis Etienne lost this game for this team, and there's no way to sugarcoat that. And I'm not going to blame Doug Peterson. I'm not going to blame anybody else. I ain't going to blame Antonio Johnson for missing tackles. Travis Etienne's fumble was the reason the Jacksonville Jaguars lost this game. And unfortunately, they're not mature enough and they're not ready at this point to overcome something like that. And I hope that this doesn't stick to them and derail them. I hope they learn from it. I hope it's really, really constructive in terms of how not to play. I'm going to talk about some superlatives. We're going to get back on that offensive line, but I'm going to talk about some guys that really, really, really showed up today. And we'll do that on the second half of this postcast of game one. The Dolphins winning 20-17. I'll talk to you more about it in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. Today's show is brought to you and sponsored by LinkedIn. I've opened 2 small businesses, and I'm on my 3rd now. I'm telling you, I couldn't have done it without LinkedIn because I was so focused on regulations and permits and handling things with the contractor, I forgot I actually needed employees. LinkedIn took care of that for me, and they could take care of it for you too, because it's not just a job board. It's where over 70% of LinkedIn users, they don't even use other job sites. So you're looking in the wrong place if you're not on LinkedIn. Here's what you have to do. You have to go to where the people are. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. All you got to do is post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. You know what time it is, man? It's time for PrizePicks, man. And y'all know all about PrizePicks and what it is. It is the number one. That's right. The number one daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active users. And all you got to do, man, is look at the projections and pick more or less. And you do that on between 2 and 6 stat projections. And then you watch all of that Skrilla roll in. Want to play PrizePicks alongside Drewski, Joe Button, and MMA champ Sugar Sean O'Malley? You can now find them in community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in PrizePicks. All you got to do is download the PrizePicks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNFL and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's the code LOCKEDONNFL on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win, man, to receive the $50. It's a bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks. Run your game. All right, second half of the Postcast. The Jacksonville Jaguars fall to the Miami Dolphins 20-17 down in Hard Rock in South Florida in a game that the Jaguars flat out should have won. The bottom line is they dominated early, but that was not enough. And Miami did what they did. They had 170 yards with 2 minutes left to go in the third quarter. 170 yards with 2 minutes to go in the third quarter. The fumble by Travis Etienne absolutely sucked the life out of this team. I'm going to go through some stats real quick. They actually ran the ball, it says 26 times. I'm going to go ahead and say that the Trevor Lawrence, it's considered a rush. 26 times. Tank Bigsby had 12 carries for 73 yards at 6.1 yards a carry. Travis Etienne with 12 carries for 44 yards. In the passing game, they were 12 out of 21 for 162 yards. So after an early start where Brian Thomas Jr. Got behind Jalen Ramsey and caused a pass interference, and then later on he would catch a touchdown, you really thought the Jaguars had control of the football game. And it looked like Trevor Lawrence was on his way to a 300-yard game. Well, he ends up with 162 yards on 12 completions with 1 touchdown. Receiving, Gabe Davis had 3 catches for 62 yards. The production I expected. I did not expect Evan Ingram to only have 1 catch for 5 yards. Parker Washington, 1 catch for 3 yards, and I'll get back to that in a second. Christian Kirk had 1 catch for 30 yards, but like 2 costly drops. Brian Thomas Jr. in his debut had his first touchdown, had 4 catches for 47 yards. Good positive is they did sack the quarterback and get some pressure, even though Tua is really good at getting the ball out early. Trayvon Walker had 2 sacks on the day to get his year off to a really, really good start. And Eric Armstead had a sack. Now, with some things that really, really hurt the team early, there were some penalties. One that was called and one wasn't called. The roughing the passer on Josh Allen was terrible, in my opinion. But then the one where Roy Robertson-Harris hit Tua, it probably should have called it, and they didn't. So those things will probably just cancel each other out. I got people on these messages telling me that Trevor's trash and that he was the cause of everything, and I could not disagree with that more. I really, really couldn't. They were drops. Christian Kirk has to learn how to catch the ball. If he doesn't catch the ball, you got to put Parker Washington in the game. I'm sorry. I'm not giving up on people after 1 week, but we know from the last 2 years how important one game is. We also know how important conference games are. We know that this team really, really wanted to get off to a real good start and appeared to have a really good game plan to do it. Once things got funny, they looked shell-shocked, and they didn't feel like they were reacting properly, and they didn't feel like they were tackling people better. They were allowing themselves to get blocked by wide receivers on the outside. Good game by Devin Lloyd. I like some of the things I saw from him. I like some of the things I saw from Yasir Abdullah. Mason Smith got a lot of pressure up in the middle. The rotation, good game plan, I believe, by defensive coordinator Ryan Nielsen. Don't know who was calling the plays on offense. Don't care. It wasn't their fault. I can call the play, but I can't make you protect the football. And then they fumbled the kickoff right behind that. That's when I knew they had the yips. When things just like Murphy's Law, anything that could go wrong will definitely start going wrong. And that's exactly what happened. And it cost them the game. And now a whole offseason of goodwill, a whole offseason of all of that, they got to try to regroup and get it together, because Cleveland's going to come in here next week, and Cleveland has a lot of weapons on offense, and they have stout people, of course, on their lines of scrimmage. And it is not going to be easy for the Jacksonville Jaguars to get it right. My wife was sitting there saying, man, we're going to be turned. We're going to be turned up at the game here next week. Yeah. The Jaguars are going to be desperate walking in there next week. They're going to have to. It's a must-win game. You can't start the season 0-2. And they had this game right in the palm of their hands. And I know, look, Etienne can overcome this. He can, but this is the exact same thing that folks were saying about Tank Bigsby last year, but at least Bigsby was a rookie. You're a veteran, man. You cannot do that kind of stuff. Christian Kirk having drops, you can't do it. It's just some stuff that you just can't do, and you don't expect the people that have been considered the best players on this team to be the ones out here making these mistakes. we just can't do it. So I'm not going to blame this on Doug Peterson. I'm not going to blame this one on Trent Baalke. This is just the football is about making plays or having plays made against you. And I'm telling you, this game was lost on a singular fumble by Travis Etienne that allowed the Miami Dolphins to just, it's almost as like it was a shot of adrenaline that they needed. And once you gave it to them, they got too many good players to allow them to get back into the game like that. So would have liked to see another couple of shots for Brian Thomas Jr. down the field. Would have liked to have seen them pass a little bit more on first down. But once again, the offensive line really, really let them down in the second half. And Miami, and I'm going to show you how bad it is. Miami, the concern in Miami all offseason was their defensive line and their offensive line. Miami was able to run the ball in the second half, had just about 400 yards of total offense. The Jaguars, not so much. So it's not about just being able to have a good game plan and having momentum on your side. For me, it just comes down to you just got to find a way to win. And you got to find a way to get out of the doldrums of when bad things happen to you. I'm still going to tell you right now, the difference in this game was the Travis Etienne fumble. They could have gone up 24-7, and momentum could have totally been on their side, and Miami would have been a little bit more desperate in what they had to do, and it would have been a little bit more predictable. But now the Jaguars are 0-1 to start the season. They come home next week to play Cleveland. They had it in their hand and they fumbled it away, and that's all you can. We can go back and forth a lot about who did what and all of the things that went wrong. It came down to that play. He knows it. You can tell he was sitting over there sulking. I probably wouldn't even put him back in the game, but he knows it. They know it. You just got to admit it and try to figure out a way how you're going to move on. Like we're going to move on. I'm going to do a postcast. This is the postcast. I'm sorry. I'm going to do a show tomorrow after I get my thoughts, and we'll try to look at this as much as we can. And maybe by the time tomorrow comes, my emotions won't be so high, and I'll really, really have some other things to add. But no moral victories here on Locked On Jaguars. You lost. And they don't have a separate column. They don't have a win, loss, and moral column. It's only wins and losses. And right now, the Jags are 0-1. All right, man. Make sure you tap in to Locked On Jaguars every single day. It's your team every day here. And also our new Locked On NFL shows. There's two. One with Tyler Rowland, the Madman, and then one with yours truly in the barbershop. It's on Locked On NFL. Make sure you subscribe and check that out each and every day wherever you get your podcast. We'll see you tomorrow, man. Hopefully y'all can get over this one. Enjoy the rest of your evening. We'll see you tomorrow. Jags are 0-1.